Today I'm meeting a very charming, smart and resourceful businesswoman. I'm meeting the owner and founder of Bloom Project Management, one of the fastest growing and successful construction management companies in the United Kingdom. Her name is Yaeger Irwin, and with her we discuss her life journey, all the challenges she had to face to create a successful business. We pondered on the nature of freedom, managing money, managing people, and the everyday struggle of the women in the construction industry. It was really a satisfying chat, and now it's your time to see it. Enjoy. Alright, G-Spodcast, episode 2, guys. I always feel weird how do I start these conversations. It's like, should I be happy-go-lucky? Should I be like, this is a very serious subject, so we need to talk about it. I'm not really sure how do I start this. But I'm going to start with very unorthodox question, Yaeger. Do you have a favorite philosopher, by the way? Because I know, and I'm asking you this question because I know that you studied philosophy. You were planning to study philosophy?
I did, and you just freaked me out by asking that because I should remember some. No, I studied philosophy at A-levels, which now seems like a lifetime ago.
I'm a Bulgarian. We don't have A-levels. I don't know what that is. But.
So I'd finished typical schooling. So I was 17, 18 and at college and doing the kind of next level of education, which is what's called A-levels here.
Yeah.
And I did philosophy for 1 year during then. So it was a great course. And now I'm just desperately racking my brains to think of philosophers off the top of my head.
No pressure.
I haven't thought about it for a long time.
It's interesting I'm asking you this question because I do have a lot of love for philosophy, and I graduated history. First of all, let me say that I'm not a philosopher, but I started reading philosophy after that in my late years. Well, late years, I'm still a young man, but it really helps you with your abstract thought and the way you're perceiving the world and the way you're using the language. I think it's something that is very, very helpful in the way you cultivate your mind and spirit in a way. So I was interested just to know why you were interested in this discipline before you moved to different things like business-orientated driven skills and coaching and so on.
I did just really love the concept of it. I enjoyed debates. I enjoyed different ways of thinking. Perspective on things is crucial, which has actually come to quite a lot of what I'm doing now. And a lot of what I'm doing now, running a business, I talk to a lot of different people to get their thoughts on things, to get perspective, to get different points of view on stuff, which is really helpful and I think keeps you grounded, which is a lot of what I probably learned a lot when I was studying philosophy. And I just found it quite a creative piece and getting into those deep conversations. And back then I just really enjoyed it. There was those conversations that you could have which would go on for hours. Now at the moment, if I ever think about anything too deep, it's always too much, and you just think I can't solve the world today. I've got too much to do.
Does it help you in any way with your company and how you're running it, or maybe with other people, how you communicate?
Definitely the thoughts of perspective, why things happen, who you're surrounding yourself with, the like-minded thoughts is crucial in business, and yes, it does help. It does help from that point of view. Why things have happened, what's the outcome from it, and there is a really good perspective to have. And it definitely has helped. It's probably helped shape who I am, but it's probably that's been compounded by further other things that happened in my life, which actually kind of take that philosophical view. It's quite hard when you're in the moment of running a business, when things happen and things get tough, to keep a philosophical mindset, because you're having to deal with the here and now. So
I can imagine. You can't do that.
It is quite tough. Yeah. But when I've realised since I sort of got a team on board with myself for the business, that I've realised that I react quite emotionally to things. So it takes me about 72 hours to calm down from an incident or from a change that we weren't expecting, for me then to be able to take that philosophical view of what's happened and how do we take it from there, what do we do, how do we treat it, and keep that, which has been quite an interesting learning about myself over the last 6 months. But equally also running my own business has become extremely passionate and things, so you take a lot more to heart than you would have done when you were sort of working for someone else.
Yeah, so you need to be cold and calculated when you're dealing with business. The emotions should not go the upper hand in your feelings. Is that it?
No, not at all. I actually think emotion in business is something that you can't get away from. And I think that it's interesting because I was having a discussion with my friend about this the other day. We were talking about it. I think in business we try to assume that there shouldn't be emotion, but there is emotion in basically everything that we do business related. My business is a people services business, so we don't really... we're not manufacturing numbers of products. It's not sort of linear. It's a sort of time-based. It's project management. It's all around people, communication, the relationships that you build up. So for me, when something goes wrong, it's usually on a sort of personal level. Something's been misunderstood, and then everything that happens kind of has quite a big sort of tsunami effect if you're a small business. So if we lose a project, it's a big impact on revenue. You're paying people's bills. It's probably quite different to a more sort of commercially driven product-based business where they can, sell 5,000 units or something. They know they've got certain income coming in. So perhaps there's less emotion on those sides of things. But I think actually business is just people dealing with each other, whatever format that's in. And that comes with a lot of emotion.
Yeah, okay.
So I don't think you can avoid it, unfortunately. And I think if you try and avoid it, that's when the issues start.
My idea was mostly about making decisions based on emotions, which can be wrong sometimes, and then you can regret about a certain decision that you made because of emotions, and you decided to make something in the heat of the moment, but then you regret about it.
Yep. I've learned a lot that gut instinct is crucial in decision making. Yeah, cut that bit. That's been a really interesting piece. And I think having to make business decisions, I've seen a lot of things and I've experienced this when I've done a bit of work for friends because you want to help them out. And those decisions are perhaps not done. I haven't got the day rate I wanted because you're helping out a friend. You end up doing more work. You feel sort of you then, that's when the emotion comes in because you don't feel valued. Yeah. Or you make decisions based on an emotional reaction to something, like somebody really upsets you and you say, right, I'm never going to do that again, and then you might end a contract or something, which actually, if you'd have just talked through what the issue is, you might not have made that decision. So I think definitely business decisions should be made with your head, not your heart. But unfortunately, I think a lot get made with our heart, and particularly at sort of startup stage, when you're building confidence, when you're building your network and things like that, you do make a lot of decisions based off emotional reaction to things.
In the website of your company, Bloom, I read something very interesting. Anyone starting their own business needs to learn how the money works. Mm-hmm. How exactly the money works? Because if you know that, like, I'll take that advice any time of the week. Yeah.
I think that's been probably one of the biggest learning curves, was working out how business money works compared to, say, when you have your own salary. So I think that when you price a project, you have to understand what you're paying towards tax. You have to understand what your exact costs are. You have to, which are direct costs. Then you've got indirect costs. So you've got business running costs. I seem to, and I think a lot of other people have that, is I have money that I can see in my bank. I have my forecast and my revenue, what I think I'm going to make. And I then have what the accountants have calculated I'm going to make. And they all vary slightly differently because they're all at points in time. And obviously the accountant is much more astute at taking off VAT, or where you can and can't claim things, which is not in my kind of revenue or cost forecasting. Yeah. And then obviously the bank is at a moment in time, that's live. So you might think you have more money than you have, but actually you owe so much for tax. Or you've had money go out and you haven't had it quite land in the bank yet, but you know it's coming. So it's a completely moving part, which is quite different to when you are salary based and you know you've got a monthly wage of, say, £2,000 coming in a month, and that's coming in and then your bills go out. When you're running a business, that wave is continuous and it's going, and you have unexpected costs. And it's not your money, it's the business's money, which I think as a business owner was quite an interesting lesson to learn, because you're sort of seeing this cash come in and think, oh my God, I've got 50 grand in the bank. I've never had 50 grand in the bank. And then you realize, well, I don't have 50 grand in the bank because 20% of that is going on corporation tax. Another load of that is going on another sort of tax. I've got to pay for this, I've got to pay for that, I'm actually left with £3,000 in the bank. So you do an awful lot of work for what's actually not a lot of cash. And it's not my money, it's the business's money. So I think people can get very caught out.
I'm sorry that I'm interrupting, but there was this movie with Danny DeVito, which I forgot what the movie was called, but he was saying there is one thing that I like more than money, and that's other people's money.
yeah. And I think it was a big learning curve, because you think I run the business, but the business isn't me. The business is an entity which I am in charge of controlling. And when I was in a previous, I worked for a big corporate, and there was an account department that did that. We did our fees, and you weren't really aware of all those on costs. So it was a big lesson to learn. And it's something that we're still trying to get right, trying to get the cash flow balance right. That's really tough. People don't pay, things come in late. And yeah, it's been a skill that not everybody has. And it's also been a skill that I rely heavily on the accountants, because it's really important to pay taxes on time. I now employ, so I've got pensions to pay, I've got national insurance to pay. It's quite a vast feat, which you can easily misjudge or get wrong. So it's been identifying your skills, and finances was not an initial skill of mine. It's something I'm learning.
I can relate to that,
but you just
definitely.
kind of have it.
Do you think it's more easy to manage money and finances, or people? What's the difference there? Obviously, you said something also very interesting in another podcast that I was listening. You said that, and I'm going to quote it here, that you can't manage how somebody feels about something, which I really enjoyed. I mean, you can't really manage that.
Yeah, so I had a really interesting experience. I always wanted to work in events. And I think what I was referring to previously was working for an events company. And I always thought that I wanted to give people a good time and make sure everybody was happy and make sure everybody was fun. And I tend to naturally take that role of group organizer with friendship groups, particularly in my family. And then I went to work for an events company, and I realized that moving from construction to the events company, that when we hosted these events, you'd have like 150, we did an event, we had 300 people there. And, we thought the event was running perfectly. Like there was, it was great food, there was great entertainment, which was our view of great. But then some people didn't enjoy it, and you can't control what they like, what they don't like, which I found really interesting, is that you can't control how somebody's going to react to it. You can create an environment as much as you can that you want it to be good and satisfactory, but you can't expect people to always respond in the way you'd expect it. And that was
I totally agree with that. Yeah, I stopped watching podcasts now. I'm not watching any podcasts, and my biggest worry is I was watching a lot of podcasts. Obviously, Joe Rogan, who is the top of the top, but I think part of it why I stopped doing that is just I don't want to be influenced in any way, or unconsciously trying to imitate or be like somebody else, or try to emulate how somebody reacts or what questions they ask, and I just have to find my own way. There's this great movie director, Orson Welles, obviously he directed Citizen Kane, and he was talking about the movies and cinema in general, that when you approach the cinema, you have to approach it like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, very innocently, like without any other baggage behind you, like books, movies that you've watched, because they form you in a way and you're losing your freedom. Mm-hmm. So tell me about how you decided to start Bloom and your life before that. Well, where did you work? I know you were in sales. You didn't like it very much.
So I've mostly been in construction. So when I finished my A levels, I left to go and work for I was moving out from home. So I got a job temping for a construction company, and I was offered a traineeship with them once I'd finished, to do a course in project management. So at the time I was 18, 19, and I thought, yep, that's great. Let's take this on, because eventually I want to work in an events industry. I'll take the project management. They're transferable skills. I can transfer to events management. So I took the job. And the job went really well. I was really enjoying it. I got on really well with the boss. And I did a part-time. So I almost did it was an apprenticeship really. They paid for me to continue doing my studies. It was in construction management. But again, the project management skills applied to it. And then from then on, my boss at the time then set his own company up, and I went to work for him in a sort of small startup firm. And we did project management of a lot of Marks and Spencer's retail units, and we were going around as a contractor fitting out the stores around the country. And my job at that point was to organise the work. I'd be coordinating the construction trades on site. Just sort of a really, really busy, fun time, hard work. I mean, it was, we'd be in the office, you'd be doing nights, you'd be doing whatever it took to get the work done. You're only ever as good as your last job. So you kind of had to work really hard at that time. And I learned a lot and met a lot of great people. A lot of lessons learnt during that time. And then I was about 25, and I think I had a really bad bit where I was interesting topic, because I know you want to talk about it, but I was obviously a young woman in a male-dominated industry, and I was doing a very similar level of work to the senior men in the business. But I felt at the time that I was probably taking advantage of how much effort I was putting in, how much work I was doing. The pay was quite a lot less in comparison. And it was just the way things were at that time. And I'd gone one weekend, I remember, to a store which I was sent round. I'd given up my weekend to go and do and check something in the toilets. And I kind of was like, what am I doing? I'm 25. I feel a bit taken advantage of. I'd reached a point where I was sort of like, why is it me that's going? The other guy lives 10 minutes away, but I'm being asked to go, and just, so it felt a little bit disadvantageous. And so I basically woke up on the Monday morning and said, I really want to work in the events industry. This doesn't feel comfortable anymore. And I handed my notice in. So I left. I didn't have a job to go to. I then went and found a job at an events company.
It was a brave decision.
It was a brave decision based on emotion.
Based on emotion,
like
definitely.
most of my decisions have been.
But you did not regret about it?
I didn't regret, no. I mean, it was, I had a great time working for that company. They were great friends. It was all fun. And it was just that realisation point at the moment. I was like, I can carry on doing what I'm doing. Or actually, I'm 25, let's go and do what you originally wanted to do. And it got me the experience, which was great. So I went and worked in an events company for a year. It was at the time of the recession, financial recession. So unfortunately, a lot of companies weren't investing in team building or company parties or events at that time. So I started work in this events company under sales to go and work for them to try and sell these events, sell these team building experiences. And there was probably a combination of me being shit at sales and there being a massive recession in the market that I didn't generate much business. So I didn't generate much business on that. I therefore didn't get the opportunities to.
Did you get the support to learn how to be a good salesman or to do a good sales pitch, or you didn't get that?
Not really. No. It was kind of try it. They'd gone through a period where everyone was heavily investing in that. Everyone was having the good times. People were doing team building regularly. There was big company parties, and it suddenly crashed. So suddenly there was a business that was in a need to generate sales. I went into the business to try and generate sales. It wasn't my forte. It still isn't. But what I did get was the experience of working in events, which is when I realised that what I actually like doing is all the organisation. And events are really short-lived. They're very, they're 24 hours. Sometimes they're only a couple of hours. Maybe you've got a festival over a weekend or so. But it was that short space of time when I realised that you can't guarantee that everybody's going to love it and have a great time. And what I missed about working in the construction industry is you build relationships up. You're in projects for can be from 3 months to 5 years. They're long projects, and that's when you can guarantee an outcome of satisfied work, people having a good time. You build up those relationships, and particularly in the role of project management, I think it's our duty in that role to create the forum where people get on. Doesn't always happen, but it's what we really heavily focus on. So therefore, I felt like actually I do really enjoy working with people. I enjoy the emotive side of it. I enjoy the challenges, and I enjoy building the relationships and getting through challenges together. And what I found in the events was they were too short-lived. So I was about 6 to 8 months, I think I was there. I moved then back into consultancy project management, and I went to work for a large corporate firm, which I was with for 12 years. They were a fantastic company. Again, I got a lot of exposure, great project experience, and a lot of support, which was interesting at my time of life then. That's where I had my 2 children when I was working there. So I was, again, part of a big company that was able to support that maternity process. They were able to support women in the construction industry. They had a big mandate against that. So, again, I was able to have role models. There were senior women in the business. So I could, you could see that route to progression, which was great. And I was there for 12 years. And then through the promotion process, I was put on an Empowering Women's course when I was made regional director. They very kindly put me on this course, which was a fantastic course, and I think goes to testament around what investment in people does. The course ran for a series of 4 days over a period of 4 months. You had 1 day a month. And the beginning of the course was really around skills and management skills, which were all very helpful. But then the last part of the course was, they asked you 3 questions, which was around your career planning. And they were, how long have you got left to work? How do you want to spend that time, and who with?
Yeah, I actually wanted to talk about those questions because they're kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I
want to elaborate about that.
They were life-changing for me. And I think they hit me at a point in time where I was... I'd had a bit of therapy. I'd done some other work. My children were, my youngest was about to start primary school, so we were coming out of a sort of a natural change in our lifestyle. And when you were sort of confronted with it, and I was 36 at the time, and I thought, well, hang on a minute, I've got what, 25 years left to work? Do I want to spend my time here? How do I want to spend that time? That's a long time. Or maybe it's a relatively short time.
Yeah.
And it was the question then around, how do you want to spend that time and who with? They were really interesting questions, because when I looked at what I was doing in my role, I was managing a lot of fees. I was managing a lot of HR issues. I had stepped so far away of doing project management and working with the clients, being on the project teams, that I had stepped so far away from that. Then it was something I really missed. I also realised that I was doing that for a larger organisation, that if I was gone tomorrow, I would realise I was very much a number in that game. So it was, for me, I'd lost the value and connection with the company. And that's no criticism of the company. I'd just realised I'd sort of outgrown it.
And also, you're an ambitious person, obviously. You wanted to involve to do something by yourself, to be
it was
creator.
Something to do it. And I certainly didn't want to create another child, so I created a business instead. So that was interesting. And who you want to spend your time around with. I mean, there's a lot of people and philosophical sayings that are saying surround yourself by good people, or put yourself in the environment where you want to thrive. And from what I've experienced in the last 2 years, that is definitely a key moment. I am now surrounded by a lot of energetic business owners, people that share my values around risk. It's pretty dangerous, because we all egg each other on, and we're all like, yeah, go for it, and we're all skint, and nobody's all struggling for work, and there's a lot of uncertainty. But it's exciting. I am surrounded by a lot more creative people that come out with different solutions of how to do things. How do we survive? How do we keep the business going? I've had an idea, let's do this. Will it work? Who knows? It's those kind of people that I find myself around now, which I'm really enjoying. And when I looked at that 25 years left to work piece, I was sort of, we took a step back, and I looked at it and thought, right, well, I know that my kids are going to be in the same place for 3 years together. We know how much that costs. A mortgage has gone up, but we know what I need to do. I'm going to give myself 3 to 5 years permission to go and try new things, which I think is quite a different perspective to saying, right, I need to get another job. And you automatically think, right, well, I've got to get a job with a higher salary or a better title. Actually, what I'm gaining in the next 3 to 5 years is much more fulfillment, I am trying loads of new skills. I mean, I've got skills in finances that I would never have had.
Yeah.
Never would have had I stayed in the company, because I just wouldn't have had that. Wouldn't have had that opportunity. Massive skills in business development, making relationships. Massive skills in building your own team and managing your own team, which is quite different to employing people in your company to do work. There's much more longevity about the people that I want to be part of my company, because they're going to help the company grow. So there's so many challenges which I am having the freedom to learn. Having the freedom to learn how to work, how we want to work, how I want to spend that time. Is it full time? Am I flexible? Do we go across Europe, London, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, when you said freedom, by the way, when you left the job before you created Bloom, before you created something that it's yours, there is this the political philosopher Isaiah Berlin, who says there is two types of freedom: freedom from and freedom for. And freedom from is the freedom of the escaped slave, freedom from responsibilities, from the shackles, from the chains of society, if you will, but just running around and doing, like, having no goals. While freedom for is the freedom, the creative freedom to create something. And you chose the second path, I think. You chose that freedom for, to create Bloom, to have a success with a construction management company.
Definitely. It's, and it's, I wouldn't say, when I say the word freedom, running your own business, I wouldn't say is freedom. It is a noose around your neck. You are constantly thinking about it. You're on one phone call away from success, or it's all going tomorrow. So I don't think there is freedom in that sort of sense when you can do that. But your point about freedom for what it can be is when it becomes really exciting. Like, I can see the potential, I can see the growth, and it is what I create it to be. And that is what is really exciting about that path, which turns out is not for everybody. I can't see why not, because I think it's really fun. I mean, it has been incredibly tough the last few months, and there have been days where I haven't wanted to get out of bed, and there's been days when you're like, I don't know how I'm going to make this work.
Some people are settled. Some people just settled. They don't want to change. Not everybody want to get out of their comfort zone. And there's nothing wrong with that, I think. We were talking before we started the show that I do have a fear of public speaking, and I don't really enjoy that. And that's getting out of your comfort zone. If you have to do something like that, you're getting out of your comfort zone, and you have to live with that for the next 3, 6, maybe to the rest of your life, if you want to do it professionally. But I wanted to ask you more about the construction business in general. Like, isn't it lonely for a successful woman in construction? It's a male-dominated environment. You're breaking the stereotype, definitely.
Yes, I'm breaking the stereotype. I have quite an advantage now about being a female-owned business, because there's a lot of procurement routes which now have to work with female small businesses, which is great. It's a natural advantage I have. I personally haven't experienced too much, I can't think of the word now, but I never really experienced bullying or that sort of offensiveness from men in the industry. However, I have always worked very hard. I've had to find that I had to really demonstrate and prove my worth, perhaps over some male colleagues that probably didn't put in as much hard work as I had done, to earn the respect of the people I'm working with. I can see where some women find it quite overpowering in terms of it being, you're being the minority in the room. And I've witnessed that. And I think it's a real shame. But personally, I've never really felt put off by that. I found it more interesting, and actually, maybe it's the way that I was brought
raised
up and raised. My mother's a very strong woman, and very competitive, and I don't know whether that's competitiveness has sort of worn off, that I haven't really seen a difference between the boys and the girls. I do recognise it, and I have always had to work really hard, and found myself again having to prove myself that I say the right thing. So I would do an awful lot of preparation before meetings. I would turn up prepared. I still do. It's the way I am. And it would always be perfect. So interestingly, that was, I had some therapy during COVID, and it turned out that a lot of things I used to do as a child as a coping mechanism, my father was quite domineering, and I grew up in sort of a family of domestic violence, and if I hadn't got something right or something was wrong, it would trigger a sort of an argument. So I grew up very early age in kind of a very male dominated space, and my survival technique as that was basically don't fuck up. You had everything right all the time, you didn't do anything wrong, you were always kind of ready and prepared, and that would avoid there being sort of anything that felt like I had triggered a sort of a nasty situation to kick off. So I think probably what I unpacked when I had therapy around that was what had been a coping mechanism as a child had actually enabled me to be prepared for male dominating figures in the industry. And actually, ironically, I've ended up mostly working for quite domineering, strong men that are in positions of power, because that's how they've got there. So I think perhaps as part of my own upbringing, which enabled me to kind of actually confront those issues, or it wasn't quite difficult for me. I also found that as I got a bit older and more established in my role, building relationships up with those people was actually quite key to breaking down those barriers. We have a really interesting take on this, and I was having a debate with somebody else in the room, at an event a couple of weeks ago, where they said, oh, you're the only woman in the room, and I get really upset when they ask you to make a cup of tea. And I was like, I get that, but why can't you use that to your advantage? You can make everybody a cup of tea, you create a nice environment, it's all relationship building, it's you can stand at the tea counter and have a conversation for 2 minutes about their family, about what they did at the weekend. And it's actually a really nice time to build up a relationship with people. You get to know people. You know, as a woman, you come across naturally with a nature of caring, and it's actually an opportunity to create a nice environment for people to have a conversation, to get to know somebody, for them to trust you for that. And I find all of this quite tiring now when they're like, oh, I always get asked to make the tea, and I'm like, just make a cup of tea. It's not really a big deal. And I think there's I do think there's a lot of that now where people are kind of on this sort of
you can't make how somebody feels, right?
Yeah, so you can't, and it's interesting. So I personally haven't done that. I have dealt with some very difficult male characters, and I have dealt with issues where I felt men have surpassed me, particularly career-wise, because I went off for 2 years with maternity leave, both times, 1 year each time, and that felt very frustrating. But I've also, you then have to take the perspective, look, we're all working for 30, 40 years. All right, I'm a year behind now, but I've still got 30, 40 years ahead of me of working. I'd rather take 6 months, a year off with my child now. I can make that time up later, and it will come. But again, that probably has driven me to always be prepared and deliver. So I just don't think you can sit on the fence and say, poor me, if you don't put the effort in.
Definitely, I agree with you. Let's finish like this. Do you have a message for a young woman that want to create her own business, or a woman in construction that want to grow in the career path? What will be your message?
My message is really for anyone, men or women, and that's know your stuff. Be prepared, take the time to put the effort in, do the hard work. I think there's a lot of people now, and it's a little bit scary. Don't get me wrong, like I love AI and I love ChatGPT, but I'm a little bit worried that particularly, and I spent a lot of time absorbing a lot of information because I was on an apprenticeship. I surrounded myself by people. I'm a little bit worried that there are people now, younger people that are at home, they don't know the answers to stuff. Too dependent on AI, too dependent on working from home, and you learn so much from being around people. That anything I would say is get out there, learn from actual people what they're doing, learn what the answers are actually for yourself, rather than just sort of plugging it into a computer and then being able to speak that, because business is done with people to people. It's not really done on computers, and people can see through that if you can't talk about what you're talking about in when you're actually with somebody. So I would say just do the homework and work hard.
Exactly. Behind every business, there is a person
Yeah.
or people in general. Thank you very much for being a guest of G-Spodcast.
No worries.
See you next time.